Welcome back, special session number 4. Happy to take your questions.
In a nutshell, can you explain what Bill 5 does? It's talked about inspections and reserves in layman's terms, so what exactly is it aiming to do?
Yeah, I think that's certainly the biggest pieces from the House's perspective. Ironically, Greg, we did an interview earlier today where I articulated that one of the reasons that the Surfside bill didn't get done last year, or this past session rather, was because there was this reserve language that was super important to the House. So what does the reserve language do? Why does it matter? As you guys know, during the Surfside issue, condominium knew that there were structural integrity issues. They voted to waive reserves, right? We're not going to keep reserves to fix this problem. We're concerned condominiums around the state may do that. Why? Because none of us want to have to pay or be assessed extra money, during this time or any other time. It was important to the House that if there's a structural integrity issue for a building, that people do what's necessary to defend the people who live there, to protect themselves by making sure they fix it and put the dollars aside to fix it. So I'm delighted that we had that agreement with the Senate. I think Representative Perez did an awesome job in helping negotiate that. Give a lot of credit to President Simpson as we bring that bill in for a landing.
Yeah, on property insurance, this is an issue that's been brewing for quite a while. And it seems like the legislature's basically been caught flat-footed here. I mean, yesterday in the Senate, they were complaining about a lack of data. They don't have many good studies on this. There's no panels being held, or even they had to beg Altmaier to come up and speak about this. How did we get to this point?
Yeah, I think the notion that we were caught flat-footed is just totally untrue and not supported by the facts. So you go back to last session, House Bill 76 or Senate Bill 76 had a lot of those issues. You talk about data collection, Lawrence. There's a specific data collection element in there where we say to OIR, you have to go and you have to collect this data that we don't have. That has long been an issue. We did that in AOB several years ago. Chairman Trumbull, who's carrying the bill, so now you're talking 3 years ago. Representative Trumbull had the AOB bill, and there was language in there that said, you shall collect data, et cetera, et cetera. Many folks wanted us to change the shall to a may, which we didn't do, specifically because one of the frustrations, I think, in Tallahassee has long been people come up here who are advocating on either side of this issue who say things, and they say them in a very, very affirmative, definitive way, and yet we say, well, give us the information, give us the data, so that we can then act upon it, and we don't get it. This happened in the litigation over the roofing issue, the solicitation language, which we addressed in the legislature, where we were trying to crack down on that practice that is happening all across the state. At least it's happening in my area quite a bit. All my family members, all my friends have had people who've knocked on their door and say, great news, I can get you a free roof. It's a total scam, right? The roof's not broken a lot of the time. So we tried to crack down on that solicitation language, got held up in court. During the litigation, while it's going on, the state goes to a lot of the insurance carriers and said, hey guys, help us. Give us the data. I think they're still waiting for a lot of those folks to respond on the data. So this has been a constant source of frustration. It is very difficult for us to do anything on any policy area without information. But the House has been very consistent, whether it's on insurance, criminal justice, healthcare, that we want the data, we want the public to see the data when possible so that we can make the best decisions.
How easy is it to get the information that's available that's within the OIR?
Gosh, it feels hard, right? I think, look, OIR can request the data. Last year in Senate Bill 76, one of the things that was super important to us was making sure it wasn't a passive situation, right? So what you'll hear from the carriers is, well, technically OIR can request this data now, right? So why do we have to put it? Well, of course, we flipped that and said, well, if they can already do it, then we'll just say that they have to do it. Right? Because we want the information, we want it to be actionable, because we realize that sometimes in any regulated industry, there's going to be a natural tendency, regardless of who's being regulated, to say we don't want to give up information, and we need to have it in order to make decisions, which is why we put it in there. We also put language in there last year on these MGAs, which people back home probably don't hear a lot about, right? But they're really important because they're kind of, other companies, I may have said shell company before, where we don't have transparency like we do over the insurance company. So OIR can request information on an insurance carrier, but we can't own their sister company where there's pass-through, right? So there's a lot of darkness there. We put in language last year to open that up, to have that kind of transparency. We've tried to build on that in this bill. So I think it was the Tampa Bay Times, I think, did a nice job on the, I don't get to say that all the time, on the autopsy story about the autopsies when insurance carriers go out of business. I think that that should come to the Speaker. It should come to the Senate President. There should be sort of a public reckoning in a short period of time. I mean, if something happens 12 months, or 24 months after a carrier goes out of business, I'm not sure that information is still good, right? I was a prosecutor. It's like investigating a case, 2 years later is probably not as good as investigating it 2 days later. So I think that those are positive reforms that are consistent with the philosophy of the House.
So considering you don't have the data right now, I mean, OIR, this was an issue yesterday. Are you guys, I mean, obviously you're going to be gone soon, but is this going to be something you foresee the legislature dealing with for the next 6 months, a year from the next session? I mean,
I don't think this doesn't go away. I mean, Jeb Bush would talk about things and he said, reform's never done, reform's never complete. And I think this is a regulated industry, so you're going to continue to see insurance bills for as long as Florida is Florida. They're going to continue to be really complicated because we are Florida, right? I mean, we do have to realize that the nature of our hurricanes, our sinkholes, like we are definitely a difficult place when it comes to insurance. So I think this is going to continue to be an issue. My hope is that we do get to a place where we're making data-driven solutions and not just looking at one side or the other. I mean, one thing that I've been very, very critical of, and I said this earlier to Greg, is we tend to live in this place in Tallahassee where you come up and you either worship at the altar of the insurance carrier or you want to do what the trial bar wants. And who loses when we do one of those things? We do everything the insurance companies want. We do everything that the trial bar wants. The people who lose are Floridians. So, I have, the House position on insurance has been, I think misreported in a lot of places or misrepresented. The reality is what we care about is that the dials are in the right place. And insurance is a very complicated issue. So, you do something on litigation reform, which we've done a lot of in this bill. We did a lot of it last year. Litigation is down, according to OIR, 22%, in large part because of the reforms that we made last year. But when we do things because now people are having frivolous lawsuits or they're partnering up with roofing companies and in my opinion, in some cases committing fraud, right? That skews the system for everybody. So we do litigation reform. We have to do some things for the consumer to protect them, as well. So protecting homeowners. So it's a balancing act, and that has long been the position, certainly my position, and the position of this body on this bill.
One of the issues that's not getting addressed this week at least is on staffing at OIR. I mean, they are well below their counterparts in other states, despite we have more domestics than any state other than New York. OIR may not officially say they need more positions, but you talk to people in the insurance industry, they know that they need more positions there. Yet that's not being addressed here. Why not?
Yeah, actually, I think OIR has said they don't need more positions, and I think the reality is, I think what they would say is we don't need more positions, we have vacant positions. I think if you go and you pull OIR's vacant positions, they have a lot of vacant positions.
Well, their salaries are also well
right, so that's a separate issue, right? So if the issue is pay, which if you guys recall, we did pay increases for state employees that were not insignificant, in large part to keep up with inflation, as well as $15. So we poured a lot of money into salaries for state employees so that they could tackle inflation and be able to support their families. But they were specifically asked, if they needed new employees, and they said no. But in fairness to them, I think Altmaier's been upfront that they have vacancies they're having a difficult time filling. Yes, sir.
Mr. Speaker, let's go back to condo reform just for a second, and you had covered this a little bit.
Yeah.
How important to the Surfside families and residents down there is this condo legislation going to be?
I think it's wildly important. And I think that, there was a lot of criticism, understandably so, about us not getting the bill done during the regular session. I can tell you that I'm happy that it's being done now. And not just because we're getting it done, but because there's a difference between where we are now and where we were at the end of the legislative session. I think that the changes that are in there that were important to us, important to Representative Perez, are the right ones. And doing the right thing sometimes is hard and it's complicated, but I do think that the bill that we have today is significantly better than the bill we could have agreed on a couple months ago.
Did you have any input on the transparency part of the legislation regarding like trade secret stuff? Was that something you had advocated for? And I was curious what you made of that.
The transparency for the homeowner?
Yeah, no, trade secrets. There's a provision that they keep citing that, the overall number of policies is a trade secret.
Yeah. Look, I usually think that the trade secret thing is sort of a shield designed to protect people from having to give over information. That's been my experience. I'm not saying it's that in this particular case. But I think that it's long been my experience that anytime somebody doesn't want to do something, it's a trade secret. We had that very same issue in healthcare transparency. It's a bill that I carried personally. And we had that from insurance carriers in that same vein, right? Who said, well, we don't want to turn over the data because it's proprietary. Maybe that's true. Maybe they just don't want us to know what the data says. And I think it is incumbent upon us to get the data, whether that's in criminal justice, healthcare, property insurance, health insurance, so that we can make those decisions. We don't want to give away people's business secrets that they work years to develop. But I also think a lot of the time it's not about protecting the secret sauce. It's about protecting the decisions. And I think if we're going to be involved in the business, which we are as the state, of regulating insurance companies, OIR approving rate hikes, being in a situation where we have to craft laws that maximize the ability of Floridians to keep their rates as low as possible, have a thriving marketplace, not have frivolous lawsuits, but also have the ability to recover on a claim. We need to have that information. And if people want us to do that in a meaningful way, they'll want to come to the table and give us that information.
Thank you, everyone.
So thank you guys, appreciate it.
Thanks.